Hello, beautiful ones. I hope you're happy and well today. I'm Annie Cook, writer, and some of you know me already. You may have read my books or listened to my podcast, or hopefully both, and you'll already know that I'm very passionate about women's voices being heard. It's a big challenge for a lot of women, especially older ones, to be fully heard and appreciated in society. But I'm also a big advocate of women telling their stories, the stories of their lives, for the people who want to hear them. You might already know, if you've looked around my website, that I have a personal experience around women's stories not being heard. My husband's grandmother was what a lot of people would call an ordinary, average woman, largely unremarkable to the world who saw her. But she was anything but ordinary. She was, in fact, an extraordinary woman who had a fascinating life. It was a life full of ups and downs, challenges that forced her to be strong when she wondered if she could be, joys that made her heart sing, and people and places that created the richest tapestry imaginable of an ordinary woman's life. She told me about how she was taken advantage of in the worst way when she was a young and impressionable teenage girl, and how that affected her whole life. She described what her life was like during the war, being married to a conscientious objector. She told me about how she'd felt about a lot of things that she'd never dared to tell anyone before. She talked about taking on and raising her grandson long after her own children were grown up. And she told me about the things in her life that had kept her Christian faith as solid as a rock, despite the monumental challenges she faced. She told me many things, but not nearly enough. And she died before I developed the confidence in my own writing and in my ability to tell great stories to have written hers. I wish I could have told her story to the family that live and to those who'll come in her wake. I know how much they'd appreciate learning more about the extraordinary woman that came before them. They exist because she did, and they deserve to know more about her. But that chance is lost forever, and it's the worst tragedy that so much of her wisdom and tales of courage and strength and the things that gave her joy have gone. They weren't documented, so her family have been robbed of so much that they deserved to know and would have loved to know about her and her life. And it's the same for every woman. Every woman. Every family matriarch deserves to have her story written and told and heard, at least for the benefit of her family. Leaving such an important legacy can join up so many dots in a family. And my own family's a case in point. My dad lost his mother when he was 2. He never knew much about her, mostly because there was nobody to tell him. His father fought in the war and never came back, so my dad got to know very little about his maternal family line, and I know nothing at all. I can't even find out where my grandmother's buried. I would give so much to have more information about her. Who she was, what her life was like before she got sick, what her hopes and dreams were, what her achievements were. How fabulous would it be if there was a memoir about her life? There's just so much in every woman's life that never gets told to the people who would love to hear it. It makes me so sad that there's so little passed on through the generations. We're all a product of our history, and that history extends for generations back from where we stand today. Family stories are important because it keeps the people from previous generations alive in our hearts and minds. For the woman who writes her story, it's a chance to explain things, describe a life in a way that people can appreciate and understand and maybe learn from. Women often write memoirs for their daughters and their granddaughters to offer them the benefit of their incredible experience and wisdom. Some women feel compelled to leave the legacy of a memoir when they're terminally ill so that their children will one day know and appreciate the fact that they lived and loved and what their lives were like. Other women might choose to write their family story before they become too old, when perhaps a stroke or dementia come without much warning and the chance is wiped off the table. When we think about our parents, there are always so many questions we want to ask, isn't there? Or wish we'd asked, or even just wondered about. There's always so many gaps. I went to a funeral last year for a friend I'd had for 30 years. She was more my mum's age than mine, but we lived in the same street and we had a lot of things in common and we became good friends. I even lived with her for a short time. She flew to the other side of the world to be at my wedding, and that was no small thing when she did it. She was in her 60s at the time, and she'd never done anything like that before. But at her funeral, I fought back a lot of tears because her eulogy covered so much of what had happened in her life that I hadn't even known about. I knew she was a brave and extraordinary woman on lots of levels, but I didn't know half of what was in that eulogy. I sat there wondering why there was so much that I'd never learned about her in all the decades we'd been friends. And that's the thing, isn't it? We might think we know a lot about the older women in our lives, or as older women, we might think our children know a lot about us, but there's always more to know and appreciate and learn from and find joy in. Women's stories, they are all amazing and all extraordinary and all filled with the kind of details that make a life rich and fascinating and well lived. A life to be celebrated long after those women are gone. Family history is important. You might be the woman who wants to leave an important legacy for your family. You might be the person who wants to have that legacy from a woman who's important in your life. Either way, I would love to help you bring that incredible story to life because it is an incredible story. I want to hear it. So I'm 1,000% sure that your family will want to. Take a look at my website at www.anniecookwriter.com and email me to book a free, no obligation 10-minute discovery call to discuss how I can help you or the woman you care about to write that all-important story. Don't leave it too long. A legacy like that is the greatest gift a family can have, and I would love to support you through the process of bringing it to life.